The most dangerous confidence killer isn't failure. It isn't rejection. It isn't criticism. In fact, most people spend years trying to fix their confidence without ever realizing what's actually destroying it. And the scary part? The mistake is completely silent. You don't notice it when it starts, you don't feel it happening, but little by little, day after day, it chips away at how you see yourself until one morning you wake up wondering why you hesitate before speaking, why you second-guess your decisions, and why you feel smaller than you used to. What is this silent mistake? It's this: you keep collecting evidence against yourself. Think about that for a second. Every day, your brain is acting like a detective. It's constantly gathering proof about who you are. Proof that you're capable, proof that you're intelligent, proof that you're worthy, or proof that you're not. And most people don't realize they've accidentally become prosecutors in their own case. Let me explain. Imagine two people walk into a room. The first person makes a small mistake during a conversation. They stumble over a word. Someone looks distracted while they're speaking. They leave the room thinking, "I'm terrible at talking to people." The second person experiences the exact same thing. Same room, same mistake, same distracted listener. But they leave thinking, "That wasn't my best moment, but overall, I handled myself pretty well." What changed? Not the event. The interpretation. One person collected evidence against themselves, the other collected evidence for themselves. And over time, those tiny interpretations become identity. This reminds me of something I noticed years ago. I used to think confident people were born with something I didn't have. You know those people. They walk into a room and somehow look comfortable. They speak up without apologizing. They laugh without worrying how they sound. They seem free. And I remember watching people like that and thinking, what secret do they know? Then I discovered something surprising. Most confident people are not constantly thinking about confidence. They're not waking up every morning saying, "I hope people like me today." They're simply not keeping score against themselves. Meanwhile, many insecure people are doing exactly that. Every awkward moment recorded, every mistake recorded, every rejection recorded, every failure highlighted in bright red marker. Their mental evidence folder becomes enormous. Then one day they look at the folder and conclude, "I guess I'm just not confident." But who built the folder? They did. Maybe you've done this too. You say something awkward in a meeting. Then you replay it for 3 days. You make a small mistake during a presentation. Then you treat it like a national emergency. You send a text and don't get an immediate reply. Suddenly, your brain starts writing a documentary about why nobody likes you. Sound familiar? If so, you're not alone. But here's the first lesson. Confidence is not built by being perfect. Confidence is built by changing what evidence you focus on. Think about a photographer. If they point the camera at the ground all day, they'll end up with hundreds of photos of dirt. Then they might conclude the world is ugly. But was the world ugly? Or did they just aim the lens in one direction? Many people do this with their lives. They zoom in on every flaw and completely ignore their wins. Someone compliments them. They dismiss it. Someone appreciates their help. They forget it. They handle a difficult situation well. They move on without acknowledging it. Then they wonder why they feel insecure. How could you feel confident if you never allow positive evidence into the case? Starting today, I want you to try something simple. At the end of each day, ask yourself one question. What did I do well today? That's it. Not perfectly, not amazingly, just well. Maybe you spoke up when you normally stay quiet. Maybe you stayed calm under pressure. Maybe you exercised. Maybe you kept a promise to yourself. Small wins matter because confidence grows from accumulated evidence. And speaking of promises, this brings us to another silent mistake. You keep breaking agreements with yourself. Imagine your best friend tells you they'll meet you at 5 p.m. They don't show up. The next day they promise again. They don't show up. A week later, same thing. Would you trust them? Probably not. Now let me ask you something. How many promises have you made to yourself recently? I'll start tomorrow. I'll wake up earlier. I'll go to the gym. I'll practice speaking. I'll stop procrastinating. How many of those promises were broken? Because every time you break a promise to yourself, your brain notices. Maybe not consciously, but it notices. And slowly it starts believing something dangerous. It starts believing your own words don't matter. Confidence is deeply connected to self-trust. When you trust yourself, confidence follows naturally. When you don't trust yourself, confidence disappears. That's why confidence isn't always about thinking better thoughts. Sometimes it's about keeping smaller promises, tiny promises, ridiculously small promises. Instead of saying, "I'm going to exercise for an hour every day," say, "I'm going to do 5 minutes." Instead of reading 50 pages, read 2. Instead of transforming your life overnight, prove to yourself that your word means something, because every kept promise sends a powerful message. I can rely on me. And when that message repeats often enough, confidence begins to grow from the inside. Now here's another silent mistake that almost nobody talks about. You compare your behind the scenes to everyone else's highlight reel. This one is brutal. You scroll through social media. You see someone speaking confidently, someone building a business, someone looking successful, someone looking attractive, someone achieving something incredible. And without realizing it, you compare their best moment to your ordinary Tuesday afternoon. It's an impossible game. Imagine watching the final 5 minutes of a movie and assuming the hero never struggled. That would be ridiculous. Yet we do this every day. We see outcomes without seeing the years of uncertainty behind them. We see confidence without seeing fear. We see success without seeing failure. We see polish without seeing practice. The confident speaker you admire, they probably had terrible presentations. The charismatic person you respect, they've likely had awkward conversations. The successful entrepreneur, they've probably failed more times than they can count. Confidence grows when you stop asking, "Why am I not as good as them?" and start asking, "What can I learn from them?" One question creates insecurity, the other creates growth, and there's one more shift that changed everything for me. For years, I believed confidence came before action. I thought people acted because they were confident. Then I realized the opposite is usually true. People become confident because they act. Think about learning to swim. Nobody stands beside a pool until they feel completely confident. That day never comes. Confidence appears after entering the water. The same thing happens in conversations. Speaking, leadership, relationships, business, life. You gain confidence by doing the thing, not by waiting to feel ready. And this leads to perhaps the biggest silent mistake of all. You treat fear as a stop sign. Fear says, "Don't do it." Fear says, "Wait until you're ready." Fear says, "What if you fail?" But what if fear isn't a stop sign? What if it's a direction sign? What if fear simply points toward growth? Think about the moments that transformed your life. The first time you spoke up, the first time you applied for something bigger, the first time you introduced yourself, the first time you took a risk. Were you fearless? Of course not. You were scared. But you moved anyway. And that movement created confidence. Most people are waiting for confidence to arrive before they begin. Confident people begin before confidence arrives. That difference changes everything. Now remember the evidence folder we talked about earlier? Here's the beautiful part. Every time you take action despite fear, you add a new piece of evidence. Evidence that you're brave, evidence that you can handle discomfort, evidence that you survive challenges, evidence that you're stronger than you thought. And eventually your brain has no choice but to update its beliefs, because confidence isn't created through motivational quotes. It's created through lived experiences. You prove confidence to yourself, one action at a time, one conversation at a time, one promise at a time, one courageous moment at a time. So if your confidence has been struggling lately, I want you to remember this. You do not need a new personality. You do not need to become someone else. You do not need to wait for some magical feeling to appear. You simply need to stop making the silent mistake of collecting evidence against yourself. Start noticing what's going right. Start keeping promises to yourself. Stop comparing your journey to someone else's highlight reel. Take action before you feel ready. Because confidence is not something you find. It's something you build. And every day, whether you realize it or not, you are laying another brick. The question is, are you building a case for your limitations, or are you building a case for your potential? Because the voice you hear tomorrow depends on the evidence you collect today. And maybe that's the most powerful realization of all. Confidence isn't reserved for a lucky few. It isn't a gift. It isn't a personality trait. It's a story. A story your mind tells about who you are. And from this moment forward, you get to decide what evidence goes into that story. Choose carefully, because the person you become is listening.